You know what I think? I think the world should be a little bit greasier. I think a little more grease would help everything run a little bit smoother. Okay, I don't think that, but I know someone who does. The Greasy Strangler was directed in 2016 by Jim Hoskin. It follows Big Brayden and Big Ronnie, who run a father-son walking disco tour. They meet a woman named Janet and fight for her attention, but Ronnie's outlet for his frustration is a little more sinister and greasy. So if greasy, pervy, off-putting, dark humor sounds interesting to you, I hope you'll stick around while I dive into it. The movie starts with Big Brayden bringing Big Ronnie his morning coffee, and they're both only in their underwear. Bro, what type of freaky ass household is this? Anyways, Ronnie asks why no one has ever tried grease instead of milk in their coffee. Brayden calls him a gross out, but Ronnie says, really, why wouldn't grease be better than milk? This prompts Ronnie to say, I bet you think I'm the Greasy Strangler, don't you? Brayden says nobody was talking about that, but Ronnie says, I'll tell you a secret. I am the Greasy Strangler. Okay, obviously he wants someone to know. Brayden calls BS and Ronnie admits he is BSing, and they have a laugh about it. Then the title card is rolled in by the movie's theme song. We see Brayden and Ronnie giving their walking disco tour, and they stop at a doorway. Ronnie says the Bee Gees came up with their song Night Fever in this doorway. The tourist in front asks what he means by came up with. Ronnie says they wrote the lyrics while waiting for a ride to a Chinese restaurant for one of the members' birthday. Long ass explanation. The tourist says he should verify that, but Ronnie just says he knows disco. Okay buddy, pack it up. Then the tourist says, what about the free drinks for the tour? Ronnie says he has the wrong information. There will be no free drinks. The tourist says even water will do, just any free drinks, but Ronnie says there will be no drinks today. 3 of the tourists try to rally against Ronnie for free drinks, which only prompts him to show his ass. No, like literally, he pulls his pants down and shows them his ass. They tell him this is bad business and they storm off, leaving only Janet, the woman in the back. Janet walks forward and Brayden apologizes for his father's outburst. Janet and Brayden have kind of a weird flirty exchange about Brayden being a cheesy old cornball. This is cut short by Ronnie asking Brayden to help him pull his pants up, the biggest block of the century. Back at home, Brayden is cooking sausages for Ronnie, and he tells them that he got a date with the hot girl Janet from the tour. Ronnie says she's just yanking his chain, but Brayden really believes she's in love with his personality. Man, what a hater. First he tries to block him, and now he's saying she doesn't like him. Let me see you do better. Brayden serves Ronnie the sausage, and Ronnie says, where's the grease? Brayden says he's been reading up and too much grease is bad for you, which only pisses Ronnie off more. Ronnie says he ought to send Brayden to live with his mom and Ricky Prickles as stepdad, and Brayden asks him to stop. Ronnie says first he makes him dry food and then he wants to leave him for a girl, so he must not like him very much. Brayden apologizes and says he'll add more grease to the sausage, but Ronnie has already lost his appetite. Brayden says Janet probably won't like him anyways once she gets to know his personality, and Ronnie says if she gets to know his personality. Bro, what is your problem? He's living here, cooking your food, tolerating your package in your underwear, and all you can do is hate and complain. Bro, if you got a problem with the grease, go cook it your damn self. We see the 3 tourists from earlier at a vending machine at a motel. The Indian man bought some chips and they're stuck in the machine. They have a long conversation about the chips stuck in the vending machine. They say they should get management and it's not fair that they're stuck, and they talk about why he likes the chips and what flavor are the chips, and there's a really long scene of him trying to say potato, and they don't understand what he's saying. He just says potato.
Excuse me, what?
Potato. Over and over again, probably 10 or 15 times. This is where I really got an idea of what kind of movie this was going to be. Every interaction so far has been so long and so drawn out and so awkward. As they're talking about this, we see the Greasy Strangler, who is obviously Ronnie, walk up. And I mean literally, walk up. They tell him to go away, but they let him walk up to them, and he slams the first tourist through the vending machine. The second tourist, he punches in the face so hard that his face literally caves in. The last man standing backs away from Ronnie as he tries to reason with him. He says he's very wealthy and can offer Ronnie a job. Then he starts talking about the girl in his room that he met in a sports bar that he had a failed encounter with. When the Greasy Strangler finally gets his hand on him, he really slowly strangles him. And the man's last words are,
Am I dead yet? My name is Sid.
He then goes to the car wash to wash all the grease off, and we get to see all of Big Ronnie blowing around in the dryer. The owner of the car wash is a blind man named Big Paul, who recognizes Ronnie as soon as he walks up. After Ronnie greets him, he pulls some money out of his cheeks to pay for him. And when we look at the money, it's hand-drawn. He literally paid him in dookie bucks. After Ronnie changes in the bathroom, Big Paul says they should go disco sometime. Ronnie says he's right, that would be fun. He hasn't been able to because his son is so depressed. Ronnie goes into detail about how bad Brayden is about pooping around the house. He says he even pooped on the TV last week. The next morning, Brayden brings Ronnie his coffee again, but this time Ronnie seems like he's a little bit moody about Janet and Brayden's date. Brayden says they haven't even had their date yet, but Ronnie knows women, and he knows Janet will want Brayden all to herself. Brayden says there's nothing to worry about because he's not good with women. Brayden then makes Ronnie some bacon, which this time is extra greasy. Greasy enough even for Ronnie, it seems, as he nods in approval. Later on, they finish up their tour for the day, and Janet shows up again. She asks where they're going for dinner, and Brayden says a sizzling Cajun hot pot. Ronnie asks what about him, and Brayden says he'll have to get takeout today. When Brayden and Janet walk off, Ronnie stares at Janet and says he could feast on her all night long. Then he imagines her naked, walking a dog for some strange reason. The freakiness in this movie is non-stop. There's always some weird shit going on. Brayden and Janet go on their date, and again, it seems really awkward, but they seem to be enjoying themselves. Brayden tells Janet about how his mom left them for Ricky Prickles when he was little. He also tells her how he went to their house one time, and Ricky Prickles made him do a really extreme workout and then molested him. Because of this experience, Brayden has never been able to exercise since. But Janet says not all girls are interested in abs. I guess she really is just in it for his personality because there's not much else going on. Janet tells Brayden she's worried because the other 3 tourists from that day were murdered. And Brayden consoles her, sort of. He just kind of says they're there over and over again until she stops talking. Ronnie goes to get a hot dog from a stand and gets mad when the salesman won't add extra grease. The salesman says that's against regulation and he could lose his license. And Ronnie again says, "You must think I'm the Greasy Strangler." He obviously wants somebody to know, oh my god, okay, we get it, you're the Greasy Strangler. He pays again with the same hand-drawn money, and now it seems that really might be their currency. And when the salesman goes to pick it up, he runs and dips his hot dog in the grease under the cart before running away. Back at the house, Brayden has returned with Janet. They're in Brayden's room, and Brayden is telling her all his dreams of being a fantasy writer. He tells her about a story with an amulet, and she says, "I bet you have a big amulet." He says he doesn't have an amulet. Biggest fumble of the century. Janet tells her he's a nice change in pace from her last boyfriend, who was all fingers, and she pulls her shirt up. He seems like he's about to start crying and then just starts to go in to try and lick her. She says she didn't give him permission to do that, which leads him to say, "By the way, where's my dad at? Why is your dad the thing you're thinking about when you're looking at an undressed woman?" Ronnie is squatting on a park bench, eating his hot dog like a wild animal, ravenously. The hot dog man retires to his camper, and Ronnie returns as the Greasy Strangler. While the salesman is using the bathroom, Ronnie comes behind him and strangles him until his eyeballs pop out. He goes inside the camper and batters, deep fries, and eats the hot dog man's eyeballs. He goes to the car wash again and goes through his normal routine, and Big Paul says, "You must be driving through some greasy roads." Yet again, Ronnie feels the need to say, "You must think I'm the Greasy Strangler." And at this point, I guess he's going to say it to everybody he meets. Paul says he never said that, and Ronnie just walks off, laughing maniacally. The next day, Brayden's friend Oinker, who is a man with a literal pig nose on his face, asks Brayden if he's ready for the horror house that night. Ronnie says Brayden didn't tell him he was going out, and he can't go out 2 nights in a row unless Ronnie comes along. Brayden tries to tell him no, but Ronnie threatens to tell Janet that Brayden's never been with a girl before if he doesn't let him go. Brayden reluctantly agrees, and then Ronnie asks Oinker about his shoes. Oinker says he's renting the shoes, but he's loving it, and Ronnie says they're very nice shoes. The 3 men honestly have a pretty fun night. They go to the horror house, which just means seeing a scary movie, and they have, of course, extra greasy popcorn. On the way home, they get Oinker to steal the vat of grease from the hot dog stand, which is now a memorial. Back at the house, Brayden and Oinker make a really greasy feast for Ronnie, which literally just looks like a pan full of grease. The next morning, Brayden asks Ronnie if Janet can come over for dinner. Ronnie ignores him as he continues the tour, which I guess is his way of saying yes. That night, all three of them are having dinner at the house, and Ronnie is clearly trying to win Janet over. He tells her he's been making his own olive oil in his room, and then starts licking the baguette freaky style. It cuts to Brayden's room and he's getting ready to lay it down on Janet. But this scene turned out to be really uncomfortable. Brayden lays down and Janet gets straight to it, and Brayden just keeps asking if he's doing it right, and it looks like he's about to start crying. Then Janet does something to him and he makes this face like he's in extreme pain. While they're going at it, Ronnie is just in his room making his olive oil. The next morning, Janet comes downstairs to see Ronnie in the dining room. She tries to make small talk with him, which he uses as an opportunity to try and slide in again. He asks her if she likes oily grapefruit before he absolutely desecrates the grapefruit with his tongue and fingers. Later, Janet is using the bathroom, and Ronnie walks up to the door because he says he wants to watch her pee. She says peeing is supposed to be private, and Ronnie says he knows, but he just needs to brush his teeth, and he won't look. But as soon as he starts brushing his teeth, he opens his eyes and stares at her pee. When she points out that he wasn't supposed to look, all he does is wink at her, and she returns the wink awkwardly. Brayden goes outside while Janet is smoking and asks her if they're exclusive because his dad told him that he watched her pee. Janet doesn't say anything, and Brayden just talks about how confused he is. Then he says, "We must be playing a quiet game, right?" And she nods. He asks her if she likes him and if she's a bullshit artist, and she nods to both. This is honestly kind of a cute, weird, flirty interaction, and it seems nice and a little bit wholesome. But we see Ronnie from his room, and he's obviously furious because his attempt to divide them did not work. That night we see Brayden and Janet getting started again before it cuts to Oinker in his apartment while Ronnie is returning as the Greasy Strangler. This death is much more prolonged, and Oinker seems to enjoy it. He even apologizes for blacking out while he was being strangled. After Ronnie kills him, he pulls the snout off of his face and dips his finger in the bloody hole before licking it. The next day, Ronnie tells Brayden he needs to take Janet out to make sure she's not playing him. Brayden doesn't want Ronnie to do that because he knows he'll be sweet on Janet. But Ronnie says he just knows women. Brayden asks if he knows women so much, then why did their mom leave? And Ronnie says she left because she was tired of Brayden pooping everywhere. And she even said so as she was leaving. Brayden says he's lying, and it's really because of Ricky Prickles and his muscles. Ronnie tells Brayden if he doesn't let him go out with Janet, he is going to get evicted. And that's pretty much the end of the discussion. As Brayden walks off, Ronnie yells out loud, "I'm Big Ronnie and I'm back!" Ronnie is a crazy man. He's playing right in Brayden's face and not even trying to hide it. While Ronnie is getting ready, Brayden asks him where he's taking Janet. Ronnie says he's taking her to a club he took Brayden's mom once back in the day. He goes into detail about how creamy the cocktails are at this place and how he's going to run up a huge tab for all these creamy cocktails. Brayden keeps begging him not to be sweet on Janet, and when Ronnie leaves, Brayden is just left crying by himself in the room. Janet and Ronnie are at the club, which is almost empty, and they kind of dance awkwardly. After they leave the club, they go to a park and sit on a bench, where Ronnie tells Janet a story about him and Michael Jackson from his disco days. At first, the story is mostly regular, but as he gets to the end, he goes into detail about him and Michael and some women and some hot, milky stuff. Every time Ronnie talks about himself, it's really clear he's the ultimate self-glazer. Ronnie then tries to make his move on Janet, but she pushes him off. She says she can't do that because she thinks she's in love with Brayden. Ronnie says that's hogwash and tells her to kiss him on his cherry lips, but she says it feels weird and walks away. On the walk back home, a spotlight shines on Ronnie as he has a dance break along the sidewalk. When Ronnie walks off, we see that Janet was actually watching him from the shadows the whole time. Maybe she really is about that big Ronnie. After the date, Janet says that Ronnie just told her a story about him and MJ. Brayden tells her that's not even the real MJ. It was just a famous impersonator who actually took his own life recently. Brayden goes back to asking if his dad was a smoothie and if he was going smooth on her during the date. Before she can answer, Brayden gets the call telling him that Oinker is dead. He and Janet go to Oinker's house, and when he sees Oinker's dead body, he freaks out. He goes in the kitchen to eat Cheeto Puffs. He tells Janet he's going to investigate and kill the Greasy Strangler himself. Janet says he can't because it's too dangerous, but Brayden isn't afraid of dying. He also says he's falling for her, and he's freaking out, but he's falling for her. He then takes an empty cigarette carton and fills it up with some leftover grease on the floor. That night, he puts some of the grease from the crime scene on a piece of toast and gives it to Big Ronnie. Ronnie eats it and says it's really good, and it's much better than the grease they always use, and wants to know where it came from. Brayden tells Ronnie he thinks he knows where it came from, which causes Ronnie to get up and run away, only further confirming Brayden's suspicions. Bro, it's so obvious he's the Greasy Strangler. Brayden calls Janet and tells her he thinks Ronnie is the Greasy Strangler. Janet says she'll come over, but Brayden tells her not to because it's too dangerous. That doesn't stop them from having phone sex before they hang up. Brayden goes to talk to his dad, but his room is empty. Ronnie is at the car wash, and he tells Paul it's time for them to go disco dancing, right before farting in Paul's face. Back at home, Paul, Brayden, and Ronnie are all sitting at the table, and Brayden asks if he can go with them too. They both tell him no and laugh in his face. As they're leaving, Ronnie and Paul talk again about how depressed Brayden is and how he needs to get on medication like he was when he was a kid. At this point, Brayden needs to step up. There is no way you're getting punked out this much by your own dad. With the house empty, Brayden goes to Ronnie's room, where he finds a bunch of dirty drawings that appear to be of Ronnie and Janet. Brayden calls Janet and tells her to come over, but when she gets there, they start going at it again. And at this point, I'm just confused. First, you tell her to stay away because you want her to be safe. Then you have further suspicions and you tell her to come over just to have sex again. And then after they're finished, she just leaves. When Janet leaves, she bumps into Ronnie on his way home. Ronnie was hiding behind a bush, almost like he was waiting for her to leave so he could bump into her on purpose. He again goes into really weird details about how milky his cocktails were, and Janet asks him if he got any of his milky hot stuff on any girls. He says that's a secret, but asks her if she wants to come inside to do something sensual, and she just walks in with him. Up to this point, I really thought she only had eyes for Brayden, but I was wrong. She goes to Ronnie's room, and let's just say they were greasily freaked out all night long. Brayden can tell what's going on, and we see him absolutely sobbing in his room. Again, I'm just left speechless at what Janet's doing now. They've almost totally confirmed that Ronnie is the Greasy Strangler, and yet she decides to go have a relationship with him. At first, I thought this was an attempt for Janet and Brayden to trick Ronnie, but again, I was wrong. I guess she just really wants that big R. In the morning, they talk about how they were active all night long, and Ronnie talks about how his member looks like a massive mouse's head. Later, Ronnie tells Brayden that he and Janet are exclusive now, and they sealed it with a kiss. Brayden says he's a bullshit artist, and we have one of my favorite scenes where Ronnie goes down all the list of different types of animal shit that Brayden is.
Bullshit!
Horseshit! Shit! Horseshit!
Penguin shit!
Brayden cries that Janet was his first, but Ronnie says he claimed her you-know-what. Brayden says he may have claimed that, but Brayden claimed her heart. Ronnie ends the conversation by telling Brayden if he doesn't stop whining, he's going to be evicted. He loves throwing around that eviction. That night, Janet is sitting in Ronnie's lap while he eats the dinner Brayden made and talking about how good the dinner is, while Brayden just sits there moping. After dinner, they do their usual stuff. When they're finished, Ronnie tells Janet she could be his forever love because she's a
Hootie tootie disco cutie.
They start chanting this, which causes Brayden to lose his mind and run upstairs and beg them to stop. But when he gets there, they just keep chanting it over and over again until Brayden runs out of the house and falls in the street crying. At work the next day, Brayden and Ronnie start staring at each other, and Ronnie starts using his Greasy Strangler growl on Brayden. Later, Brayden decides he has to get Janet back, and approaches her while she's standing naked in the kitchen after finishing with Ronnie. Brayden tells her he's been dreaming about her and asks if she's missed him. She admits that she has, and Brayden confesses that he loves her. They have another awkward flirty interaction before Brayden asks her to marry him. And this really solidifies that Brayden has zero self-respect. This lady hasn't even put her clothes back on after doing stuff with your father who she cheated on and left you for, and you're gonna ask her to marry you? Anyways, as they were having this exchange, Ronnie was standing on the other side of the wall and he's fuming, and it's clear that the Greasy Strangler is about to return. Janet goes up to Ronnie's room and finds he's not there. The only thing there is a pile of grease on the ground, which she goes up to, picks up, and licks off her finger. We see the car wash running, so it seems like the Greasy Strangler has already done his dirty work. But when Big Paul calls out to Ronnie, the Greasy Strangler comes out instead, and Big Paul becomes his next victim. Ronnie cuts off Paul's head, dances with it for a second, and then throws it like a basketball. Brayden calls the detective and tells him he suspects his father is the Greasy Strangler, and the detective says he'll be there tomorrow. The next day, the detective named Jody arrives, and his appearance is very strange. He tells Brayden to show him the evidence, and when he sees the grease, he rubs it on his face. This is where I realized the detective was really Ronnie in disguise. Brayden tells Jody that this grease is the same grease from Oinker's murder, and so he must be the Greasy Strangler. They go downstairs, and Jody says his father might be the Greasy Strangler, but there's no evidence, so they should drop it. When Brayden brings up again the same greases in two places, Jody says that circumstantial evidence is meaningless. They try to reason with him, but all he'll say now is, "Please end all inquiries here." Of course he's doing this because he's Ronnie and he wants them to leave it alone because he's the Greasy Strangler. Jody goes over to the mirror, but when he looks in the mirror, his reflection is the only thing that moves. He pulls his glasses down and says Jody needs to leave now. When he leaves, he goes to the mailbox, pulls his clothes out, and changes back into his Ronnie clothes right in front of the house. That night, Brayden and Janet are in bed, and Janet finally confesses that she loves Brayden. Brayden asks her to marry him, and she says of course she will. Little did they know, Ronnie was hiding under the bed. Ronnie comes out from the bed. Ronnie says Janet is supposed to be his girlfriend. He forbids Brayden from being with her, and he tells Brayden he's evicted. Janet says that's fine because Brayden's gonna come live with her, and he can have her whenever he wants. She also says it's okay if he craps the bed because she'll rub it on herself. Finally, Brayden says that Ronnie was right about one thing, that Janet is a hootie tootie disco cutie. This time, Brayden and Janet start chanting this, which makes Ronnie run away. They think they've won, but he returns in moments as the Greasy Strangler. He knocks Brayden out and runs off with Janet. When Brayden comes to, he goes to Ronnie's room and finds the Greasy Strangler grease. He says he can be greasy too and immerses himself in the grease. Brayden comes out, Greasy Strangler number 2. He runs all the way to the horror house and goes inside to find Ronnie strangling Janet in one of the theaters. Now I thought this was going to be where Brayden saved Janet from Ronnie, but instead, he takes over strangling her. Now Brayden is the one strangling, and he strangles her until her eyeballs pop out. Then he and Ronnie snack on her eyeballs as they finish the movie. They go to the car wash together, this time hand in hand. The next scene is Ronnie and Brayden walking on a beach, and it seems their shared strangling was a major bonding event. Ronnie tells Brayden he was really a great kid. He says when Brayden was a baby, he gave up an opportunity to open a disco club with John Travolta to be there for Brayden, and he doesn't regret it at all. He says he'd rather be there with Brayden than in New Orleans at a disco club with John Travolta. But Ronnie admits that he was a nuisance at times, and that's probably why he took his girlfriend. Ronnie says Janet was truthfully disgusting, and Brayden agrees. They go back and forth talking about how gross she was, and they agree they don't need her. Then Brayden gets the bright idea that they should kill Ricky Prickles. We see a man running through the forest, and he is followed by the 2 Greasy Stranglers. He trips, so they catch him and they pull his ears off, which of course they snack on. After they bury him, they roast his eyes for dinner. For the rest of the movie, we just see the pair running through the forest, and they've totally embraced being the Greasy Stranglers. They come upon themselves being killed by a firing squad. When they're shot, their heads pop open with champagne and confetti. But when they see this, they just keep running. I guess this sort of symbolizes that the regular Ronnie and Brayden are dead, and all that's left is the grease. The movie ends with Ronnie and Brayden approaching the camera with spears, as if saying, "You are next." And that's the Greasy Strangler. I have to say, this is definitely one of the most wild movies I've ever seen. I kept thinking I had seen it all, and one more thing would happen that made my jaw totally drop to the floor all over again. I was always surprised by the choices of the characters, and I could never guess what was going to happen next. I've seen a lot of far out movies, but I think this might just be the farthest. As surprising as it is, this movie is not at all what I expected, even from a movie whose title is The Greasy Strangler. The humor interactions reminded me a lot of Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job, while still having some elements of seriousness and horror. Even though it was absolutely wild and unnatural, I still had some investment in the characters and their relationships. In a world where everyone wants to be perfect, they just want to be greasy. My favorite part of this movie was just the awkward and weird vibes in general. I even liked how bizarre it looked when their eyeballs would pop out. It looked a little bit cheesy, but it certainly matched the vibe of the movie. Something I didn't necessarily enjoy was all the gross out moments in the movie. Seeing them dunk their food in grease, rub grease on their body, and even eat leftover grease off the floor genuinely gave me a stomachache, and I was eating while I watched this the first time. Overall, I would give this movie 3.5 stars out of 5, and that's almost purely on the creativity of it. I think it's certainly a funny movie, and you could have some laughs with some friends while watching it. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the movie, and I hope you'll watch it yourself. If you have any movies you'd like for me to watch, leave a comment and I'll give it a look-see. Also, if you care to see how I rated other movies, give me a follow on Letterboxd, where I rate all the movies I've seen, not just the one for videos. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll tune in again.